The dust rising on the horizon caught Fletcher Vance's attention as he mended the fence line on the northern edge of his property. And when the figure finally materialized through the heat shimmer of that August afternoon in 1887, he could see it was a woman on foot, stumbling more than walking, her dress torn and stained with what looked like days of hard travel. She collapsed just past his property marker, and by the time Fletcher reached her with his horse, he could see she was not only exhausted and sunburned but unmistakably pregnant, her belly swollen beneath the tattered fabric of what had once been a respectable traveling dress. He lifted her carefully, noting how light she was despite her condition, and carried her back to the ranch house without asking a single question about where she had come from or what she was running from. The main house sat in a valley so remote that Fletcher sometimes went weeks without seeing another soul, which was exactly how he preferred it after the war and everything that came after. He had chosen this corner of Nevada territory specifically because it was the kind of place a man could disappear into, where the nearest town of Verde was a full day's ride away, and the mountains rose up on three sides like natural fortress walls. The ranch itself was modest but well-maintained, with a sturdy log house, a barn that housed his 4 horses, and enough grazing land for the small herd of cattle he kept more out of habit than necessity. Fletcher laid the woman on his bed and fetched water from the well, cool and clear from the mountain spring that fed it. Her lips were cracked and bleeding, her face burned raw by the sun, and when he carefully dripped water into her mouth, she swallowed reflexively but did not wake. He had seen men in this condition during the war, pushed past the point where the body could sustain consciousness, and he knew she would need time and care to recover. He dampened a cloth and gently cleaned the dust and grime from her face, revealing features that might have been pretty under better circumstances, with high cheekbones and a straight nose, though her dark hair was matted with sweat and dirt. She slept through the rest of that day and all through the night, and Fletcher kept watch from the chair beside the bed, dozing fitfully and waking every hour or so to check on her. He had been alone on this ranch for 3 years, ever since he had scraped together enough money to buy the land and start over, and the presence of another person in his house felt strange and unsettling. The silence he had grown accustomed to seemed heavier now, broken only by her labored breathing and the occasional creak of the floorboards as he shifted his weight. When dawn broke across the valley, painting the mountains in shades of gold and rose, her eyes finally opened. They were green, he noticed, the color of new grass after spring rain, and they were filled with a wariness that went bone deep. She tried to sit up, her hands immediately going to her belly in a protective gesture, and Fletcher held up his hands to show he meant no harm. "Easy now," he said quietly. "You are safe here. You collapsed on my land yesterday afternoon." Her voice when she spoke was hoarse and raw. "Where am I?" "About 30 miles northeast of Verde, Nevada. My name is Fletcher Vance. This is my ranch." She looked around the room, taking in the sparse furnishings, the rifle mounted above the door, the single window that looked out over the valley. Her hand remained on her belly, and he could see her mind working, calculating distances and possibilities. "I need to keep moving," she said, though her body betrayed her words by swaying when she tried to stand. Fletcher caught her arm, steadying her. "You are in no condition to go anywhere. You nearly died of thirst and exhaustion. Whatever you are running from, you will not outrun it in your current state." Something flickered across her face, fear mixed with resignation, but she did not deny that she was running. She sank back onto the bed, her strength clearly spent. "I cannot stay long. I cannot put you in danger." "I have been in danger before," Fletcher said. "One more day will not make a difference. Let me at least feed you and make sure you and the baby are healthy enough to travel." She studied him for a long moment, those green eyes searching his face for something he could not name. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her because she nodded slowly. "One day, then I have to go. What should I call you?" he asked. She hesitated, and he wondered if she would give him a false name. "Katherine," she said finally. "Katherine Kane." "Well, Katherine Kane, when did you last eat?" She had to think about it. 3 days ago, I think, maybe 4. I lost track." Fletcher went to the kitchen and put together a simple meal of bread, dried beef, and canned peaches, along with more water. She ate slowly, carefully, as though her stomach had forgotten how to process food. He noticed her hands trembling as she lifted the cup to her lips, noticed the bruises on her wrists that looked like fingerprints, and he felt a familiar anger stirring in his chest, the same anger that had driven him to leave civilization behind in the first place. "How far along are you?" he asked, keeping his voice neutral. 7 months, near as I can figure. You walked a long way in your condition. You must have been desperate." Katherine set down the cup and met his eyes. "I was. I am, but I will not bring my troubles to your door, Mr. Vance. You have been kind, and I will not repay that kindness by putting you at risk." "I am not asking you to tell me anything," Fletcher said. "I am just saying that if you need a place to rest for a few days, you can rest here. No questions asked. When you are ready to move on, I will give you supplies and point you in whatever direction you need to go." She looked at him as though he had spoken a foreign language. "Why would you do that for a stranger?" Fletcher thought about the question, about the easy answer he could give about Christian charity or common decency, but he settled on the truth instead. "Because I know what it is like to need a safe place and not have one, because I have enough to share, because it is the right thing to do." Katherine's eyes filled with tears, though she blinked them back fiercely. "1 week," she said. "Give me 1 week to get my strength back and I will be gone. I promise I will not bring trouble to you." 1 week, Fletcher agreed, though something in his gut told him that trouble had already arrived. Whether he acknowledged it or not, over the next few days, Katherine slowly regained her strength. Fletcher gave her his bed and took to sleeping in the barn, despite her protests. He cooked simple meals and made sure she had plenty of water, and he noticed how she started to fill out a bit, how the color returned to her cheeks, and the burns on her face began to heal. She did not speak much about herself, and he did not press her, but he learned small things through observation and brief conversations. She had been educated, that much was clear from the way she spoke and carried herself. She knew how to read and write, and she had a quick mind that took in details and remembered them. She was also tough in a way that went beyond physical endurance, with a core of steel that kept her going even when her body was ready to give out. Fletcher found himself admiring her resilience, the way she never complained about her circumstances or asked for more than the basic necessities. On the 4th day, she felt well enough to help with small tasks around the house. He found her in the kitchen when he came in from checking the cattle, standing at the stove and stirring a pot of stew that smelled better than anything he had cooked in months. "You do not have to do that," he said. "I know. I wanted to. You have been feeding me for days. The least I can do is cook a proper meal." They ate together at the small table, and for the first time since she had arrived, the silence between them felt comfortable rather than awkward. Katherine asked him about the ranch, about how he came to settle in such a remote location, and Fletcher found himself telling her more than he had told anyone in years. "I fought in the war," he said. "For the Union, in Virginia mostly. When it was over, I went back to Ohio where I grew up, but everything had changed. My parents were dead, my brothers scattered. I worked odd jobs for a few years, saved my money, and came west looking for a fresh start. I heard about this land, about how remote it was, and I figured that was exactly what I needed. Do you ever get lonely out here? Katherine asked. Fletcher considered the question. Sometimes, but lonely is better than the alternative, at least for me. I had enough of people and their complications to last a lifetime, and yet you took me in without hesitation. That was different. You needed help. I could not just leave you to die out there. Katherine smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. You are a good man, Fletcher Vance. Better than you probably give yourself credit for. He felt heat rise to his face and looked down at his plate. I just do what seems right. That night, as Fletcher lay in his bedroll in the barn, he found himself thinking about Katherine in a way that had nothing to do with charity or duty. He thought about the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled, about the sound of her laugh when he had told her a story about one of his more stubborn horses. He thought about how natural it had felt to sit across from her at dinner, sharing a meal and conversation. And then, he reminded himself firmly that she was pregnant with another man's child, that she was running from something serious enough to drive her into the desert alone, and that getting attached to her would be the height of foolishness. But knowing something intellectually and convincing your heart of it were two different things entirely. By the end of the first week, Katherine was moving around the ranch with increasing confidence, though Fletcher noticed she always kept an eye on the horizon, always seemed to be listening for the sound of approaching horses. He had not asked her what she was watching for, keeping his promise to respect her privacy, but he found himself watching too, his hand never far from his rifle. On the 8th day, Katherine approached him while he was repairing a broken hinge on the barn door. "I should leave tomorrow," she said without preamble. "You have been more than generous, but I cannot impose on your hospitality any longer." Fletcher set down his tools and looked at her. The sun was behind her, turning her dark hair to bronze and casting her face in shadow. "Where will you go?" "Further north, I think, maybe into Oregon Territory, somewhere I can disappear. Winter comes early in the mountains. If you go north now, you will be traveling with a newborn in snow country. I do not have much choice." "You could stay here," Fletcher said, the words coming out before he had fully thought them through. "At least until after the baby is born. You would be safe here and you would have shelter and food. Once the baby comes and you are both strong enough to travel, then you can decide what to do next." Katherine shook her head. "I cannot ask that of you. 2 more months, maybe longer, that is too much. You are not asking, I am offering, and before you refuse, think about what is best for your child. You said yourself you are running from something. Well, whoever is looking for you, they are not going to find you here. I have been on this ranch for 3 years, and I have had maybe a dozen visitors total. This is as remote as it gets in Nevada territory." He could see her wavering, could see the exhaustion and fear warring with her stubborn independence. "Why would you do this?" she asked. "You do not know me. You do not know what I might have done, what kind of trouble might follow me." Fletcher met her eyes steadily. "I know you are a woman who needs help. I know you are carrying a child who deserves a chance at life. That is all I need to know. The rest of it, whatever it is, I figure you had your reasons." Katherine looked away, her hand moving to her belly in that protective gesture he had come to recognize. When she looked back at him, there were tears streaming down her face. "I killed my husband," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "He was going to kill me and the baby both. He had already beaten me so badly I lost consciousness twice. When I woke up the last time, he was drunk and passed out, and I knew it was my only chance. I hit him with a poker from the fireplace. I hit him until he stopped moving. Then I took what money I could find and ran. That was 3 weeks ago in Carson City. There will be a warrant out for my murder. If they find me, they will hang me, and my baby will die with me." Fletcher absorbed this information without flinching, without judgment. He had seen enough of the world to know that sometimes violence was the only answer to violence, that sometimes the law and justice were not the same thing. Did he hurt you often? Every day of the 6 months we were married. He married me because I was pregnant, and he resented me for it from the start. He said I had trapped him, though he was the one who forced himself on me at the hotel where I worked. My parents were dead, I had no family, and when I found out I was pregnant, I thought marriage was my only option. I thought I could make it work. I was wrong. Then, as far as I am concerned, you did what you had to do to survive. You can stay here as long as you need. If anyone comes looking, which I doubt they will, we will deal with it then. But I do not think anyone is going to search this far out for a woman on her own. Katherine wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. You really mean that? I really mean it. She nodded slowly, something like hope flickering across her face. Then I will stay until the baby is born, but after that I should still move on. I will not put you in danger indefinitely. We will talk about it when the time comes, Fletcher said. For now, let us just focus on keeping you and the baby healthy. As the days turned into weeks, a routine developed between them that felt surprisingly natural. Katherine took over most of the cooking and helped with the household chores, while Fletcher tended to the livestock and maintained the property. They ate their meals together, sharing stories and slowly getting to know each other in the way that people do when they have nothing but time and each other's company. Fletcher learned that Katherine had grown up in San Francisco, the daughter of a schoolteacher and a seamstress. She had received a good education through her father's connections, but when both her parents died of influenza within a week of each other, she had been left with nothing. She had worked as a maid in a hotel, saving every penny she could toward passage on a ship back east where she had distant relatives. But then her employer's son had attacked her one night when she was turning down the beds, and everything had changed. I should have fought him harder, she said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the mountains. I should have screamed, should have run. You did what you had to do to survive, Fletcher said firmly. None of what happened was your fault. Not the attack, not the pregnancy, not even the marriage. You were trapped at every turn, and you did the best you could with impossible choices. Katherine looked at him with something like wonder. How can you be so understanding about all of this? Most men would have thrown me off their property the moment they knew the truth. Fletcher thought about how to answer that. I have seen too much of the world to believe in simple judgments. During the war, I saw good men do terrible things and terrible men do good things. I learned that circumstances matter, that context matters. I also learned that the law does not always serve justice, and that sometimes people have to make their own way in the world as best they can. You did what you had to do to protect yourself and your child. I cannot fault you for that. You are unlike anyone I have ever met, Katherine said softly. I could say the same about you. Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition of connection that went deeper than gratitude or circumstance. Fletcher felt it settle in his chest, warm and dangerous, and he knew he was treading on uncertain ground. Katherine was still technically a married woman, though her husband was dead. She was pregnant with another man's child, a child conceived in violence. She was wanted for murder, even if it had been in self-defense. Getting involved with her romantically would be complicated at best, disastrous at worst. And yet, he found himself wanting exactly that. September gave way to October, and the aspen trees on the mountainsides turned gold and red. Katherine's belly grew larger, and Fletcher noticed her moving more slowly, her hand pressed to her lower back. He brought in extra firewood and made sure the house was well stocked with supplies for the coming winter. He also rode into Verde one afternoon. making the long journey to stock up on baby supplies and to hear if there was any news about a fugitive woman. The general store owner, a grizzled man named Pete who had known Fletcher since he first arrived in the territory, raised an eyebrow at the items Fletcher was purchasing. "Planning on a family, Vance. Just helping out a friend," Fletcher said neutrally. "Must be some friend to need all this." "Though I suppose it is none of my business." "No, it is not," Pete chuckled. "Fair enough. You have always been a private one, but since you are here, you should know there was a marshal through here about 3 weeks back, asking questions about a woman traveling alone. Said she was wanted for murder out of Carson City." Fletcher kept his expression carefully neutral. "What did you tell him?" "Told him I had not seen any women traveling alone, which was the truth at the time." He moved on toward Reno. "Seemed to think she would head for California, try to catch a ship somewhere." "Good to know. I will keep an eye out." "You do that. Though out at your place, I doubt you will see much of anything. You are about as remote as a man can get and still be in civilization." Fletcher loaded his supplies and made the long ride back to the ranch, his mind working through the implications of what he had heard. The marshal had been searching, but he had gone in the wrong direction. As long as Katherine stayed at the ranch and did not venture into town, there was a good chance she would never be found. The question was what would happen after the baby was born. Would she still want to run? And if she did, would he let her go? He found himself hoping fiercely that she would choose to stay, even though he had no right to that hope. When he returned to the ranch, Katherine was in the kitchen kneading bread dough, her movements slow and careful. She looked up when he entered, flour dusting her cheeks, and smiled at him. "You were gone a long time. I was starting to worry. Just had to go into Verdi for supplies. I brought back some things for the baby." He showed her what he had purchased, simple items like blankets and cloth for diapers, a few small gowns. Katherine's eyes filled with tears as she touched the soft fabric. "I cannot believe you did this. I cannot believe how kind you have been." "It is nothing," Fletcher said, though they both knew it was not nothing. "It is everything," Katherine said. She set down the blanket and looked at him seriously. "I need you to know that I am grateful for all of this, for everything you have done. I know I can never repay you, but I want you to know it matters. You matter." Fletcher felt something shift in his chest, a wall he had built around his heart cracking just slightly. "You matter too, Katherine, more than you probably realize." She took a step toward him, then another, until she was standing close enough that he could smell the flour and yeast on her skin, could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. "Fletcher," she said softly, and the way she said his name made his heart race. He reached out and touched her cheek, his thumb brushing away a smudge of flour. "We should not do this. You are still grieving, still recovering from everything that happened. I do not want to take advantage." "You are not taking advantage. I know exactly what I am doing." "I have known for weeks now." She covered his hand with hers, holding it against her face. "I have been so alone for so long, and you have made me feel safe. You have made me feel like maybe I could have a future after all. I am not asking for promises or commitments. I just want you to know that whatever I feel for you, it is real." Fletcher felt the last of his resistance crumble. He leaned down and kissed her, gentle and careful, and she kissed him back with a sweetness that made his throat tight. When they pulled apart, they were both breathing hard, and Katherine was smiling through her tears. "I think I am falling in love with you," she whispered. "I know it is too soon. I know it is complicated, but I cannot help it." "I am falling in love with you too," Fletcher admitted. "I have been fighting it for weeks, but I cannot fight it anymore." They held each other in the kitchen as the bread dough rose on the counter and the sun moved across the sky outside. Fletcher knew that nothing about their situation was simple. that there were still dangers ahead and questions to be answered. But in that moment, with Katherine in his arms and her heartbeat steady against his chest, he allowed himself to believe that maybe they could build something good out of all the broken pieces of their pasts. The baby came on a cold November night when the first snow of the season was falling softly outside the windows. Katherine had been having irregular pains all day, but she had insisted they were just false labor, nothing to worry about. Then her water broke while they were eating dinner, and Fletcher knew it was time. He had assisted with animal births plenty of times, but helping a woman give birth was an entirely different prospect. He boiled water and gathered clean towels, following Katherine's instructions as she breathed through the contractions. The labor lasted through the night and into the early morning, with Katherine's cries echoing through the small house as she pushed and struggled to bring new life into the world. Fletcher held her hand through it all, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth and murmuring encouragement even when he had no idea if what he was saying made any sense. He had never felt so helpless or so terrified in his life, not even in the worst moments of the war. If something went wrong, if Katherine or the baby did not make it, he would be devastated in a way he had not let himself be devastated in years. But just as dawn was breaking over the mountains, painting the snow-covered valley in shades of pink and gold, the baby finally emerged, slippery and squalling. Fletcher caught the infant carefully, marveling at how tiny and perfect she was, and Katherine sobbed with relief as he placed the baby on her chest. "It is a girl," Fletcher said, his voice rough with emotion. "A healthy baby girl." Katherine held her daughter close, tears streaming down her face as she counted fingers and toes, checking to make sure everything was as it should be. The baby had dark hair like her mother and lungs that worked perfectly, if the volume of her crying was any indication. Fletcher cleaned them both up as best he could, then wrapped the baby in one of the soft blankets he had bought in Verdi. "She is beautiful," Katherine said, gazing down at her daughter with pure love. "She is perfect." "What will you name her?" Fletcher asked. Katherine thought for a moment, then smiled. "Rose. I want to name her Rose because she is a beautiful thing that somehow managed to grow in the harshest conditions. Rose is a good name." Over the next few weeks, the ranch house took on a new rhythm built around the baby's needs. Fletcher found himself waking at all hours to the sound of Rose crying, found himself pacing the floor with her while Katherine tried to get a few hours of sleep. He changed diapers and warmed bottles when Katherine's milk was not enough, and he discovered that he had a natural talent for soothing the baby when she was fussy. He also discovered that he loved it, loved being part of this makeshift family they had created. He loved watching Katherine with Rose, seeing the fierce protective love in her eyes. He loved the quiet moments late at night when they sat together by the fire, Rose sleeping peacefully between them, and talked about everything and nothing. "I have been thinking," Katherine said one night in mid-December, "about what happens next." Fletcher felt his stomach tighten. "What about it? I think I want to stay. Here, I mean, on the ranch, if you will have us." Fletcher set down the piece of harness he had been mending and looked at her. "Are you sure? I know you talked about moving on, about finding somewhere you could start fresh." "I have started fresh. This is fresh. You and Rose and this ranch, this is more than I ever thought I could have. I do not want to run anymore, Fletcher. I want to build a life here with you." "If you want that too." "I want it more than anything," Fletcher said honestly, "but we need to be realistic about the risks. There is still a warrant out for your arrest. If someone finds out you are here, there could be trouble. Then we will be careful. I will not go into town, will not do anything to draw attention. We will just be a family living quietly on a remote ranch. People do that all the time. What about Rose? She will grow up without knowing the truth about her father." I will tell her the truth when she is old enough to understand. I will tell her that her biological father was a violent man who hurt me, but that Fletcher Vance was the man who truly raised her and loved her as his own. Because that is what you are doing, is it not? You are raising her as your own. I am, Fletcher admitted. I love that little girl like she was my own flesh and blood. And I love you, Katherine. I want to marry you, want to make this official if we can. We cannot get married legally. Not yet. As far as the law is concerned, I am still married to a dead man and I am wanted for his murder. But we can have our own ceremony, make our own promises to each other. That can be enough. That is enough for me, Fletcher said. They held their ceremony on Christmas Eve, standing together in the small parlor with Rose sleeping in her cradle beside them. There was no preacher, no witnesses, just the two of them speaking vows they had written themselves. Fletcher promised to love and protect Katherine and Rose for the rest of his life, to provide for them and care for them no matter what challenges they faced. Katherine promised to be a faithful partner and mother, to build a home with Fletcher that was filled with love and security. They sealed their vows with a kiss, and Fletcher felt something settle deep in his soul, a sense of rightness he had not felt in years. This was what he had been searching for without knowing it, this sense of belonging and purpose. Katherine and Rose had given him back a piece of himself he thought he had lost forever. The winter passed quietly, with snow piling deep in the valley, and the three of them cocooned together in the warm ranch house. Fletcher taught Katherine to shoot, reasoning that she should know how to protect herself, and Rose if anything ever happened to him. She turned out to be a natural with a rifle, with a steady hand and good aim. He also taught her about ranching, about how to tend the livestock and maintain the property, skills that would serve her well if she ever needed to manage on her own. In return, Katherine taught Fletcher things he had forgotten about himself, like how to laugh freely and how to see joy in small moments. She taught him that he was capable of gentleness and patience, that the hardness he had built around himself during the war did not have to define him. With her and Rose, he became a better version of himself, a man he actually liked being. Spring came late to the valley, but when it finally arrived, it came with a burst of wildflowers and rushing streams fed by melting snow. Rose was 6 months old now, a happy baby who smiled readily and was starting to sit up on her own. Katherine bloomed too, her body recovering from the birth and her spirits lifting with the warmer weather. She started a garden near the house, planting vegetables and herbs, talking about how they would preserve food for the next winter. Fletcher watched her one afternoon as she worked in the garden, Rose playing on a blanket in the shade nearby, and felt a contentment so complete it almost scared him. He had everything he wanted right here in this valley, this woman and child who had become his whole world. But he also knew that the past had a way of catching up with people, and he worried about what would happen if Katherine's secret was ever discovered. His worry proved prescient one afternoon in late May when he saw riders approaching from the south. He had been expecting a visit from Pete with supplies, but these were not supply wagons. These were 3 men on horseback, and they had the look of lawmen about them. Fletcher immediately went to the house where Katherine was inside with Rose. "We have visitors," he said quietly. 3 men coming from Verdi, they might be marshals. He saw the fear flash across Katherine's face, saw her instinctively grab Rose and hold her close. "What do we do?" "You take Rose and go to the root cellar. There is a false panel in the back that leads to a cave. I showed you where it was last month, remember? Go there and do not come out until I come get you. No matter what you hear, do not come out. Fletcher, what if they arrest you for harboring me?" "Then they arrest me, but I am not going to let them take you or Rose. Now go." Katherine kissed him quickly, fiercely, then gathered up Rose and slipped out the back door. Fletcher watched long enough to make sure she made it to the cellar. Then he stepped out onto the porch to meet the approaching riders. They were indeed lawmen, with badges glinting on their vests. The one in the lead was a hard-faced man in his 50s, with gray hair and cold eyes. He reined in his horse a few feet from the porch and nodded at Fletcher. "Afternoon. You would be Fletcher Vance." "I would be. What can I do for you?" "I am Marshal Tom Garrett out of Carson City. These are my deputies. We are looking for a woman named Katherine Kane, wanted for the murder of her husband. We have reason to believe she might have come this way." Fletcher kept his expression neutral. "I have not seen any women traveling alone out here. This is pretty remote territory. Most people do not come this far unless they are specifically looking for my ranch." That is what the man in Verde said. "But we have been tracking her for months now, following every lead. She disappeared without a trace last August, and we figured she must have headed into the backcountry. Your ranch is about the most remote location in this part of Nevada, so we thought we would check it out. Well, as you can see, it is just me here. I run a small cattle operation, keep to myself mostly." Marshal Garrett dismounted and walked closer, his eyes scanning the property. "You mind if we look around, just to be thorough?" Fletcher minded very much, but he knew refusing would only make them more suspicious. "Go ahead, but I would appreciate it if you did not disturb my livestock. They are not used to strangers." The marshal and his deputies searched the barn, the outbuildings, even came inside the house. Fletcher held his breath when they entered, hoping Katherine had not left anything obviously feminine lying around. But the house looked much as it always had, sparse and utilitarian, with nothing to indicate a woman's presence except for some extra dishes in the kitchen. "You do your own cooking and cleaning?" the marshal asked, noting the tidy state of the kitchen. "I do. Learned to take care of myself during the war. A man living alone has to be self-sufficient." "That is true enough." The marshal walked through the other rooms, and Fletcher saw him pause in the bedroom, saw him notice the baby blanket he had forgotten to hide. "What is this?" "I traded some cattle to a family passing through a few months back. They gave me some of their old baby things as part of the deal. I have been meaning to trade them again or donate them somewhere." The marshal held up the blanket, studying it. "Seems like an odd thing to keep if you have no use for it." "I have not been to town in a while. Like I said, I keep to myself." The marshal set down the blanket and continued his search, but he seemed to be losing interest. After another 20 minutes of looking around without finding anything incriminating, he and his deputies regrouped on the porch. "Sorry to have bothered you, Mr. Vance. We appreciate your cooperation." "Of course. I hope you find the woman you are looking for." "We will." "She killed a man in cold blood, bashed his head in while he slept. A woman like that is dangerous. When we catch her, she will hang." Fletcher felt rage simmer in his gut but kept his expression carefully neutral. "Well, good luck with your search." The lawmen mounted up and rode back the way they had come, and Fletcher watched until they disappeared over the southern ridge. Only then did he allow himself to breathe properly. He waited another hour to make sure they were truly gone, then went to the root cellar. "Katherine, it is me." "They are gone." She emerged from the false panel with Rose in her arms, both of them covered in dust and cobwebs. Rose was fussing, unhappy about being confined in the dark, and Katherine's face was streaked with tears. "What did they say?" "They were looking for you, but they did not find anything. I convinced them I am just a solitary rancher. I think we are safe, at least for now." Katherine collapsed against him, sobbing with relief. "I was so scared. I heard voices, but I could not make out what you were saying. I thought they were going to arrest you, thought they were going to take Rose away from me." "That is not going to happen. I will not let it happen." He held her close, feeling the tremors running through her body. But we need to be more careful. No leaving anything out that might indicate a woman and baby are living here. If anyone else comes around, you hide immediately. We cannot take chances. I know, I am sorry about the blanket. I should have put it away. It is fine. They did not think too much of it. But Katherine, there is something you need to know. The marshal said your husband was killed while he slept. He said you bashed his head in. Is that true? Katherine pulled back, her face pale. He was passed out drunk. That is not the same as sleeping peacefully. He had beaten me so badly I thought I was going to die. When he finally stopped and collapsed, I knew it was my only chance. I knew if I did not do something, he would kill me and the baby. So yes, I hit him while he was unconscious. I hit him until I was sure he could never hurt me again. I believe you, Fletcher said. I just needed to hear it from you. The marshal made it sound like cold-blooded murder, but I know it was not. You did what you had to do. Do you think they will come back? I do not know, maybe, but they seemed satisfied that you are not here. With any luck, they will move on to search somewhere else. They went back to the house, and Fletcher helped Katherine clean up. That night, they held each other close in bed, with Rose sleeping in her cradle beside them, and Fletcher made silent promises to whatever God might be listening that he would keep his family safe no matter what it took. The marshal did not return, but the visit had shaken Katherine badly. She became more withdrawn, more nervous, jumping at every unexpected sound. Fletcher tried to reassure her, tried to help her feel safe again, but he could see the fear eating away at her. She started having nightmares about being arrested, about Rose being taken away, and she would wake up gasping and crying in the middle of the night. "We should leave," she said one night after a particularly bad dream. "We should take Rose and go somewhere else, somewhere they will never find us. Canada maybe, or Mexico. Running will not solve anything," Fletcher said gently. "Wherever we go, you will still be looking over your shoulder. You will still be living in fear. Is that what you want for Rose? For her to grow up constantly moving, never having a real home?" "I want her to grow up with a mother who is not in prison or dead. I want her to have a chance at a normal life. Then let us give her that, here on this ranch. We have been safe for almost a year now. The marshal came and found nothing. If we keep being careful, if we keep living quietly, I think we can make this work. But what if they come back? What if someone recognizes me? Then we will deal with it when it happens. But I refuse to live in fear of what might happen. Life is too short for that, Katherine. I learned that during the war. All we have is right now, this moment. Let us make the most of it." Katherine looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You are right. I am sorry. I am just scared. I know, and that is understandable, but you are not alone anymore. Whatever comes, we will face it together." As the months passed, Katherine's nightmares gradually became less frequent, and she started to relax again. Rose grew into a toddler, learning to walk and babble and explore her world with fearless curiosity. Fletcher built her a wooden hobby horse and a small wagon, and Katherine sewed her dresses from fabric Fletcher brought back from town. They celebrated her first birthday with a cake Katherine baked and presents Fletcher had carved from wood, and watching Rose's delight as she smashed her hands into the frosting. Fletcher felt his heart swell with love for this child, who was not his by blood, but was completely his in every way that mattered. Life on the ranch settled into a comfortable rhythm. Fletcher expanded his cattle operation, building up his herd and improving the grazing land. Katherine's garden flourished, and she learned to can and preserve food for the winter months. They worked side by side during the days and fell into each other's arms at night, and slowly, carefully, they built a life that felt solid and real. When Rose was 2 years old, Katherine discovered she was pregnant again. The news filled Fletcher with a joy so profound he could barely contain it. This child would be his biological child, his and Katherine's together, a symbol of the love they had built out of pain and necessity. Katherine was thrilled too, though she worried about how she would manage with two small children. "We will manage together," Fletcher assured her. "Just like we always do." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, with none of the complications that had marked Katherine's first pregnancy. She bloomed with health, and Fletcher could not take his eyes off her. He loved watching her belly grow, loved feeling the baby kick under his hand at night. Rose seemed to understand that something was changing too, and she would pat her mother's belly and say, "Baby," in her piping toddler voice. Their son was born on a crisp October morning in 1889, 2 years after Rose had arrived. The birth was faster and easier than Rose's had been, and Fletcher held his son in his arms within hours of Katherine's first contractions. The baby was small but healthy, with Fletcher's dark eyes and a full head of black hair. "What should we name him?" Katherine asked, exhausted but glowing with happiness. Fletcher thought about it, about all the men he had known in his life who had shown courage and honor. "What about Samuel? It was my father's name." "Samuel Vance. I love it." With 2 children now, the ranch house felt fuller and livelier than ever. Rose adored her baby brother, wanting to help with everything from diaper changes to feeding times. Fletcher built an addition onto the house, adding 2 more bedrooms so the children could each have their own space as they grew. He also hired a hand to help with the ranch work, a young man named Tom who was discreet and incurious about Fletcher's personal life. The years passed in a blur of activity and joy. Rose started learning her letters from Katherine, proving to be a bright and eager student. Samuel grew into a sturdy, fearless boy who followed his father everywhere and wanted to help with every ranch chore. Fletcher taught them both to ride, to rope, to take care of the livestock. Katherine taught them to read and write, to cook and garden, to find beauty in the wild landscape around them. By 1892, 5 years after Katherine had first stumbled onto the ranch, their life together felt unshakable. They were a family in every sense of the word, bound together by love and shared experience. Fletcher could barely remember what his life had been like before Katherine and the children, could not imagine existing without them now. But he knew better than to get too complacent. The past always had a way of resurfacing when you least expected it. The knock on the door came on a Saturday afternoon in June. Fletcher had been out checking fences with Tom, and Katherine was in the garden with the children. She heard the knock and went to answer it, wiping dirt from her hands on her apron. When she opened the door, she found herself face to face with a stranger, a well-dressed man in his 40s with kind eyes and a careful expression. "Mrs. Kane?" he asked. Katherine's heart stopped. She considered lying, considered slamming the door and running, but something about the man's demeanor made her pause. "Who is asking?" "My name is James Mitchell. I am an attorney from San Francisco. May I come in? I promise I am not here to cause you trouble. I have information you need to hear." Katherine glanced toward the garden, where Rose and Samuel were playing under the watchful eye of their father, who had just returned from the fields. She made a decision and stepped back to let the attorney enter. "Say what you have to say, Mr. Mitchell, but make it quick. My husband will be inside any moment and he is not fond of strangers. Of course, I will be brief." James Mitchell pulled some papers from his bag. "I represent the estate of Thomas Kane, who was your late husband." "I know who he was," Katherine said tightly. "Yes. Well, the reason I am here is that new evidence has come to light regarding his death, evidence that corroborates your version of events." Katherine felt the room spin around her. "What kind of evidence?" "Thomas Kane's previous wife came forward last year. She had been living in Oregon under an assumed name, hiding from him. When she heard about his death, she returned to Carson City and gave testimony to the authorities. She documented years of abuse similar to what you experienced, including medical records from doctors who treated her injuries. She also testified that she had fled the marriage because she believed Kane would eventually kill her. "I did not know he had been married before," Katherine whispered. "He did not tell you because he was wanted for attempted murder in Oregon. The marriage to you was not even legal because he never officially divorced his first wife." Based on her testimony and the evidence she provided, the charges against you have been dropped. You are no longer wanted for murder. In fact, legally speaking, you were acting in self-defense and have been cleared of all wrongdoing. Katherine felt her knees go weak, and she grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. "You are saying I am free, that I do not have to hide anymore." "That is exactly what I am saying. I have the official documents here clearing your name. I have been searching for you for months to deliver this news. You disappeared very thoroughly, Mrs. Kane. Or should I say Mrs. Vance? I understand you have remarried. How did you find me?" "I hired an investigator who followed every lead, no matter how cold. He eventually found a merchant in Verdi who remembered a man fitting your husband's description buying baby supplies a few years back. We took a chance that you might be living somewhere in this area, and after weeks of searching, we found this ranch. I apologize for the intrusion, but I thought you would want to know that you are free to live openly now, without fear of arrest." Katherine was crying now, tears streaming down her face as the weight of 5 years of fear and hiding lifted from her shoulders. "I cannot believe this. I cannot believe it is really over." The door opened and Fletcher came in, his expression immediately wary when he saw Katherine crying and a strange man in their house. "What is going on here?" "Fletcher, this is James Mitchell. He is an attorney. He came to tell me that the charges against me have been dropped. I am free." "We are free." Fletcher looked from Katherine to the attorney and back again, processing this information. "Is this true?" "It is absolutely true," James confirmed. "Your wife has been cleared of all charges related to Thomas Kane's death. She is free to go wherever she wants, live openly under her real name without any fear of legal consequences." Fletcher pulled Katherine into his arms, holding her tight as she sobbed against his chest. He looked over her head at the attorney. "Thank you for bringing us this news, Mr. Mitchell. You have given my wife her life back. It is my pleasure. She deserves justice after everything she endured. I will leave these documents with you. They should be sufficient to prove her legal status if anyone ever questions it. I will also note that, since her marriage to Kane was not legal, her marriage to you is entirely legitimate. You have nothing to worry about on that front." After the attorney left, Katherine and Fletcher stood in the middle of their house, holding each other while Rose and Samuel played outside, blissfully unaware of the momentous news that had just been delivered. Katherine felt like she could finally breathe properly for the first time in 5 years, like a weight she had not realized she was carrying had been lifted from her shoulders. "It is really over," she kept saying. "I cannot believe it is really over." "You are safe," Fletcher murmured. "You have always been safe here with me, but now you are safe everywhere. You can go into town, see people, live a normal life. The children can grow up without their mother having to hide." "I do not want to go anywhere," Katherine said fiercely. "I have everything I need right here. You and Rose and Samuel, this ranch, this life we built together. That is all I want, Fletcher. That is all I will ever want. Then that is what we will have. The life we have been building, except now we can live it freely, without looking over our shoulders." They told Rose and Samuel that evening, though they kept the explanation simple enough for young children to understand. They said that their mother had been worried about something for a long time, but the worry was gone now, and everything was going to be fine. Rose seemed to understand that something important had happened, and she hugged her mother tightly. Samuel, at 3 years old, mostly cared that there was extra cake after dinner to celebrate. In the weeks that followed, Katherine did venture into Verdi a few times, accompanying Fletcher on his supply runs. It felt strange and wonderful to walk through the town openly, to introduce herself to people as Mrs. Vance without fear. The townspeople accepted her readily, curious about the woman who had been living on Fletcher's remote ranch but too polite to pry too deeply into her past. She became friends with the wives of other ranchers, women who came to visit and share recipes and stories. She joined the church, though it meant a long ride every Sunday, because she wanted Rose and Samuel to grow up as part of a community. She even helped organize a school for the children in the area, offering to teach since she had been educated herself. Fletcher watched her bloom in this new freedom, watched her become even more confident and joyful than she had been before. But he also noticed that she never wandered far from the ranch, that she always seemed most content when they were at home together, just the four of them. She had told him the truth when she said she did not want to go anywhere. The ranch had become her sanctuary, her safe place, and nothing would ever change that. Years continued to pass, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. Rose grew into a beautiful young woman with her mother's green eyes and sharp mind. She loved books and learning, and Katherine nurtured that love, teaching her everything she could and ordering books from catalogs so Rose could continue her education. Samuel grew tall and strong like his father, with a natural talent for ranching and a deep love for the land. In 1895, when Rose was 8 and Samuel was 6, Katherine discovered she was pregnant again. This time it was twins, a boy and a girl they named Matthew and Grace. The ranch house expanded again to accommodate the growing family, and Fletcher hired another hand to help manage the increased work. Life was full and busy, with 6 people now living on the ranch. There were always chores to do, meals to cook, children to teach and care for. But there was also laughter and love, a sense of belonging that Fletcher had never known before Katherine came into his life. He would sometimes stand on the porch in the evening, watching his family gathered around the dinner table or playing in the yard, and feel an overwhelming gratitude for the strange twist of fate that had brought Katherine to his doorstep all those years ago. When Rose turned 16 in 1903, she announced that she wanted to become a teacher. Katherine's eyes filled with tears of pride, and Fletcher could not have been more pleased. They arranged for Rose to attend a teaching college in Reno, though she came home during summers and holidays. Samuel took over more of the ranch operations, proving himself to be a capable and thoughtful manager. The twins were growing into unique individuals too, with Matthew showing an interest in medicine and Grace displaying a talent for art. In the spring of 1905, Rose met a young man at college, a lawyer's son named David who treated her with respect and kindness. When she brought him home to meet the family, Fletcher saw the way David looked at Rose, with a combination of admiration and love that reminded him of how he had looked at Katherine all those years ago. He gave his blessing to their courtship, and they were married in a small ceremony at the ranch the following summer. Katherine cried through the entire wedding, though they were happy tears. She held Fletcher's hand as they watched Rose exchange vows with David, and she whispered, "Our daughter." "Can you believe we have a daughter getting married?" "I can believe it," Fletcher whispered back. "She grew up to be strong and smart and kind just like her mother. She is her own person. She is remarkable, she is, and she is happy. That is all we could ever want for her." As their children grew and started families of their own, Fletcher and Katherine found themselves with more time alone together than they had had in years. They would take long rides through the valley, just the two of them, and talk about everything and nothing. They would sit on the porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sun set over the mountains. They would wake up in the middle of the night and make love quietly, cherishing the privacy and the intimacy they shared. "You ever regret it?" Katherine asked him one night as they lay tangled together in their bed. "Taking me in all those years ago. Your life would have been simpler if you had just left me out there in the desert." "My life would have been empty," Fletcher said firmly. "You and the children are the best thing that ever happened to me. I have never regretted a single moment. Even the scared moments, when the marshal came, when we thought we might be separated, even those moments. They taught me how much you mean to me, how far I would go to protect you. And look at what we built together, Katherine. Look at this life. We have 4 incredible children, and now we have grandchildren. We have this ranch, this land that we have poured our hearts into. We have each other. That is worth every scared moment, every difficult choice." Katherine pressed her face into his chest. "I love you so much. I loved you from almost the first moment, even when I was too scared to admit it. You saved my life in every way a person can be saved. You saved mine too. I was just existing before you came along. You taught me how to live again, how to feel again. You gave me a family and a purpose. I am the one who should be grateful." They held each other in the darkness, 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful out of pain and necessity. The road had not always been easy, but they had walked it together, and that had made all the difference. As the years rolled on into the 1910s, the world around them changed dramatically. The Wild West era that had defined Fletcher's youth was fading into history, replaced by automobiles and electricity and modern conveniences. But on their remote ranch, time seemed to move more slowly. They eventually got a telephone line installed, and Fletcher bought a truck to replace some of their horses, but the essential character of their life remained unchanged. They still worked the land together, still tended their animals and garden. They still sat on the porch in the evenings and watched the sunset paint the mountains in brilliant colors. They still went to bed together every night and woke up together every morning, and the love between them only deepened with time. In 1920, on the 33rd anniversary of the day Katherine had stumbled onto his ranch, Fletcher organized a surprise celebration. He invited all their children and grandchildren, as well as friends from town and neighboring ranches. Katherine cried when she saw everyone gathered, overwhelmed by the evidence of the life they had built together. Rose gave a speech, talking about how her mother had taught her to be strong and independent, how her father had shown her what true love looked like. Samuel raised a toast to his parents, thanking them for building a home that was always welcoming and warm. The twins shared stories about growing up on the ranch, about the adventures and lessons that had shaped them into the people they had become. When it was Fletcher's turn to speak, he looked at Katherine with tears in his eyes. 33 years ago, a woman showed up on my land, running from a past that would have destroyed most people. She was scared and hurt and carrying a child that was not mine. I could have turned her away. I probably should have if I wanted to avoid complications, but something told me to help her, to give her a chance. That decision changed my life in ways I never could have imagined. He took Katherine's hand, holding it tight. "Katherine Kane, you walked into my life when both of us were broken, and together we became whole. You gave me a family, gave me love, gave me a reason to be better than I thought I could be. You have been my partner, my best friend, my love for more than 3 decades. I would do it all again in a heartbeat. I would choose you every single time." Katherine could not speak through her tears, but she did not need to. The love in her eyes said everything that needed to be said. They danced together that night under the stars, holding each other close while their family and friends celebrated around them. Fletcher felt Katherine's heartbeat against his chest, steady and strong, and he sent up a silent prayer of gratitude for the life they had shared, for every moment of joy and struggle that had brought them to this place. As they swayed together in the darkness, Katherine whispered in his ear, "Thank you for never asking what I was running from. Thank you for just letting me stay." "Thank you for choosing to stay," Fletcher whispered back. "Thank you for building this life with me." The years continued their steady march forward. Fletcher and Katherine grew older together, their hair turning gray and then white, their movements slowing but their love never diminishing. They watched their children succeed and sometimes struggle, watched their grandchildren grow up and start having children of their own. They attended weddings and funerals, celebrated victories and mourned losses, always together, always supporting each other. In 1925, Rose published a book about frontier education, drawing on her mother's experiences and her own career as a teacher. She dedicated it to Katherine and Fletcher, thanking them for showing her what perseverance and love could accomplish. Samuel expanded the ranch significantly, buying up adjacent properties and building it into one of the most successful cattle operations in northern Nevada. The twins pursued their passions too, with Matthew becoming a doctor who served rural communities and Grace becoming a respected artist whose paintings captured the beauty of the Nevada landscape. Fletcher and Katherine took pride in their children's accomplishments, but they were most proud of the fact that all their children were kind and decent people who treated others with respect and compassion. They had broken the cycle of violence and fear that had marked both their early lives, had built something better for the next generation. On a warm summer evening in 1930, when Fletcher was 72 and Katherine was 68, they sat together on the porch as they had done thousands of times before. The valley stretched out before them, golden in the late afternoon light, and the mountains stood watch as they always had. Rose's oldest daughter was visiting with her new baby, and they could hear the child's laughter drifting through the open windows. "We have 11 grandchildren now," Katherine said, marveling at the number. 11 people who exist because you took a chance on a desperate woman 43 years ago. 15 if you count the greats, Fletcher corrected with a smile. Rose has 4 grandchildren already. 15. Good Lord. We started an entire dynasty. We built a family. That is all we ever tried to do. Katherine leaned her head on his shoulder and they sat in comfortable silence for a while. Finally, she said, "When I die, I want to be buried here on the ranch, not in town, not in some distant cemetery. Right here, where I felt safe for the first time in my life." "You are not dying any time soon," Fletcher said firmly, though he knew they were both getting old, knew their time was growing shorter. "Maybe not. But when I do, that is what I want, and I want you buried beside me so we can stay together even after we are gone." "That is exactly what we will do, but let us not talk about dying on such a beautiful evening. Let us talk about living, about all the years we have left. All right, what should we do with those years? Exactly what we have been doing. Love each other, love our family, take care of this land. It is a simple life, but it is a good one." "It is the best one," Katherine agreed. They lived another 15 years together, years filled with the quiet joys of a life well lived. They saw great-great-grandchildren born, saw the ranch pass into Samuel's capable hands and then into his children's hands. They saw the world change dramatically around them, with radio and eventually television bringing news from distant places, with wars fought in Europe and Asia, with social and technological changes that would have been unimaginable in their youth. But through it all, their love remained constant. They were each other's anchor, each other's home. When Katherine's health began to fail in 1945, Fletcher cared for her with the same tenderness he had shown when she first arrived on his ranch all those years ago. He sat by her bedside, holding her hand and telling her stories about their life together, about all the moments they had shared. "I love you," she whispered on what would be her last night. "I have loved you every day for 58 years. "I love you too," Fletcher said, his voice breaking. "You made my life worth living. No regrets, not a single one." Katherine smiled, squeezed his hand weakly, and closed her eyes. She passed peacefully in her sleep, with Fletcher holding her hand and their children and grandchildren gathered around her bed. She was 83 years old, and she had lived a full and remarkable life. They buried her on a hillside overlooking the ranch, just as she had requested, with a simple stone that read Katherine Vance, beloved wife and mother, 1862–1945. Fletcher visited her grave every day, talking to her about the ranch and the family, telling her about the new babies being born and the achievements of their descendants. Fletcher lived another 2 years without Katherine, years that felt empty and incomplete. He was 90 years old when he passed away in his sleep in 1947, and his family buried him beside Katherine as he had requested. His stone read, Fletcher Vance, loving husband and father, 1858–1947. At the funeral, Rose stood before the gathered family and told the story one more time, the story that had become family legend. She told them about how her mother had stumbled onto Fletcher's ranch, pregnant and desperate and running for her life. She told them about how Fletcher had taken her in without question, had protected her and loved her, and given her a chance at a new life. She told them about the love that had grown between Fletcher and Katherine, a love that had sustained them through 6 decades of marriage and produced 4 children, 11 grandchildren, and more great and great-great-grandchildren than anyone could easily count. "They gave us more than just life," Rose said, looking out at the sea of faces. All of them descended from that one desperate woman and the cowboy who never asked what she was running from. "They gave us an example of what love can accomplish, of what it means to choose compassion over judgment, courage over fear. They built this family on a foundation of love and acceptance, and that is the legacy they leave us." The family spread out across the ranch after the funeral, walking the land that Fletcher and Katherine had worked for so many decades. They visited the original cabin that had housed Katherine when she first arrived, now preserved as a historical site. They walked through the expanded house that had sheltered multiple generations. They stood at the graves on the hillside and paid their respects to the couple who had started it all. And in the years and decades that followed, the story of Katherine and Fletcher was passed down through the generations, growing and evolving but never losing its essential truth. It became a story about second chances, about the power of love to transform lives, about the courage it takes to offer help to a stranger in need. The ranch itself remained in the family, passed down through Samuel's line, and then through his children's children. It grew and changed with the times, but there was always a piece of it that remained untouched, a memorial to Fletcher and Katherine and the life they had built together. The graves on the hillside became a pilgrimage site for family members, a place where they could connect with their history and remember where they came from. In 2017, 130 years after Katherine first arrived at the ranch, her great-great-great-granddaughter stood at those graves and read aloud from a diary Katherine had kept during her early years at the ranch. The entries were simple and matter-of-fact, recording the daily activities of ranch life, but woven through them was a thread of wonder and gratitude that brought tears to the eyes of all who heard them. Fletcher fixed the fence on the north pasture today, One entry read, "I cooked a stew for dinner and he said it was the best he ever had. I think he was exaggerating, but it made me happy anyway." Rose laughed today, really laughed, and Fletcher's face lit up like sunrise. "I never thought I would have this. I never thought I deserved it. But somehow I ended up here, in this beautiful valley, with this good man who never once made me feel like I was anything less than worthy of love. I am grateful every single day." Another entry, written a few years later, simply said, "Fletcher told me he loved me today like he does every day, and I still cannot believe my good fortune. This life we are building, this family we are creating, it is everything I never dared to dream of. If I could go back and talk to the woman I was before I found this place, I would tell her to hold on, to keep going, because something beautiful is waiting on the other side of the pain." And a final entry, written near the end of Katherine's life. "Fletcher and I sat on the porch tonight and watched the sunset, like we have done thousands of times before. He held my hand and we did not need to talk. After all these years, we can say everything we need to say without words. This ranch, this life, this love, it has been more than I ever hoped for. When I die, I will die happy, knowing that I was loved and that I loved in return. What more could anyone ask for?" The family gathered on the hillside that day in 2017, felt the weight of that legacy, felt the connection to these two people who had lived and loved more than a century before. They understood that they were all here, all existing, because of one desperate decision made on a hot August day in 1887, when a pregnant fugitive found the most remote ranch in the territory, and a cowboy never asked what she was running from. Instead, he had simply taken her in, given her a place to heal and rest, and in doing so, he had found his own salvation. Together, Katherine and Fletcher had built something that lasted far beyond their own lifetimes, a testament to the enduring power of love and compassion. As the sun set over the Nevada mountains that evening, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose just as it had done for more than a century, the family raised glasses in a toast to Katherine and Fletcher, to the love they had shared, and to the legacy they had left behind. And somewhere, in the quiet spaces between moments, two souls rested together on a hillside, their love story complete but never forgotten, their names and deeds living on in the hearts of all who came after them.